Hi everyone, it is Catherine here from Inky Finger Cat, and it is another magazine kit card. This is the day after I filmed the last video, and on that last video I stamped two of the fuchsia stamps that are in this Crafter's Companion kit set, and didn't end up colouring the second one. So because I'd still got the stamp in my stamp platform, I didn't want to move it until I'd done this, but I decided to colour it slightly differently, as in I decided to use my watercolour pencils as opposed to just inks or watercolour paints. I'm pretty much doing the same technique as last time in terms of a little bit of a messy watercolour, and then I'm going to emboss over the top of it in gold. So from that point of view, it's pretty similar to the last card in terms of that technique. But then I do change this one up a bit with a little bit of a different treatment of the background, shall we say. So these watercolour pencils I have had for donkey's years. I think most of them are probably WH Smith brand. Maybe there's a couple of other brands in there as well. So they're definitely not fancy pencils. And what I achieve by doing it this way is probably just a slightly lighter colour, because there's less pigment being laid down than when I'm doing it with the inks. So it does end up looking different, but not drastically different, because the main thing is the gold embossing. So for this technique, I stamp, and I'm not going to claim I invented this technique. Definitely saw it on Amy's channel, Prairie Paper and Inks. Stamp in a light colour, then you colour in your image in a messy-ish way. It gives you a chance to be a little bit freer, because you're then going to add the line art in later by using an embossing powder. The important thing for this is to keep your stamp in the same place in your stamp platform, so that you can line it up easily without having to think about lining it up. Just put your cardstock back in the same place, basically. Which is why it was important to get this one done, even though it's a very similar card to last time, because I want to use my stamp platform. I don't want to have to keep the same stamp in there forever. So this time I decided, last time I thought an oval would look better as a background die, but this time I decided to just die cut this entire panel with the oval in the first place, and so it becomes in its entirety the topper. I then and ah about what I'm doing, and I decided to use this pattern paper, which is the reverse of the one that I used yesterday. But I decided I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to add a lot of gold embossing to the background. Now, I know on a few cards I've done this technique where I've used the sentiments that are in the set to stamp into the background, added some embossing, and also did that little trick that Sarah's Stamping Retreat I saw, which is to splatter with water and then emboss that. Why I've never thought about doing this before in my life, I don't know. But rather than using a stamp to create a splatter effect, just use water. The embossing powder holds onto that water, and then you can get a really effective splatter. So that adds some texture to the background and a little bit of difference with that gold embossing and the text, etc. And I decided I wanted to rip that panel and have a little bit of frame for it. So at this point I've just pulled out a scrap of navy cardstock, and then I'm going to trim that down and add it to both sides. And it just adds a little edge of the navy to my panel. I then straighten up my panel to make it sort of the right rectangular shape, and now I'm going to choose to make my card base from this slightly flimsy, not great quality cardstock. So not ideal, but it'll do enough to make this card. I'm happy enough that it'll make a card that will stand up. It'll be fine. Will it last forever? Probably not. But then who keeps their cards up forever? Nobody. So it doesn't matter. I decided I did want to mount with a little bit of dimension that oval. So I went and die cut the oval again twice from the lilac, so it didn't matter that it was lilac cardstock that was going to peep out, but it didn't have quite enough in that scrap to do a full oval. I decided it really didn't matter. It was enough to pop these layers together so that I've got a little bit more dimension to that particular oval. And then I stuck it underneath an acrylic block to just set. Now, this is the first card. I think I've brought in something else, as in something I have stamped that's from another set, etc. And this is actually a foiled sentiment, and it was because I was running out of time when I was making this. So, this is a foiled sentiment from a Spellbinders set. I think it's a press plate. I've done it on navy previously. I keep all sentiments to the side so that they're easy for grab and go. And on this case, I decided I wanted to do easy. So I'm creating my little inside panel. I have just some thin white cardstock there, and I'm just going to add a little scrap of the same pattern paper to the inside, and that's my card pretty much done. I go and grab these Hey Little Magpie gems and choose the pink sparkles. Just think that they'll work nicely with the colours, and there's my final thing. Now you can see there it looks really dark because of the sun shining on it, but obviously when you are, it depends on the angle, etc., as to how dark that embossing actually looks, because it's the gold on the thing. So you can see there it looks a little bit lighter. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a simple card to make, dead quick and easy, partly because I'd already done the stamping in the original, and using the pencils was actually quite a quick and easy way to do it. Please subscribe to see more. Don't forget the playlist on my Using Up a Magazine kit. Please like and comment, and until next time, bye bye.